Daf Samach Zayin Amud Beis, 7 lines from the top. We were discussing previously about a karpov that was more than a beis asayim, a karpov that was less than a beis asayim. Continuing on with that discussion. Amar v'yochanan karpov yoser beis asayim shaloi hukav l'diru. If you have a karpov that's more than a beis asayim, it's larger than 5,000 square amps, and it was not hukav l'dira. It wasn't surrounded and fenced in to surround a residential area. So it's a karpov. It's a karpov that is more than a beis asayim. It's a large area. It wasn't initially fenced in to enclose a house, a residential area. So in this type of a case, we say that the Rabbanan asered carrying in such a case. Rabbanan asered it because it has an appearance of a public place, of a Rishus HaRabim, and if you carry there in such a large area, people will think you can carry in Rishus HaRabim, so the Rabbanan asered carrying over there. Afilu kur of afilu kurayim, even if it's as large as a kur. It's a huge area. A kur is 30 so. Even if it's as large as a kur or kurayim, or 60 so, azarek l'seicha chayev. If somebody throws from there, he throws it from the Rishus HaRabim into that area, he's chayiv. It's an Isser D'Oraisa. Meaning, as opposed to other areas which are a karmelis, which the Rabbanan asered carrying, over here, this is different. Over here, D'Oraisa, this is a Rishus HaYochid. It has mechitzas. It's enveloped by mechitzas, surrounded with mechitzas, and proper mechitzas. Min HaTorah, this is a Rishus HaYochid. So therefore, if a person throws from the Rishus HaRabim into this area, he's chayiv. He threw from Rishus HaRabim to Rishus HaYochid. Now, you have other cases of a karmelis where the Rabbanan asered carrying. Then those areas, if a person throws from Rishus HaRabim, he's potter, because D'Oraisa, it's not considered a Rishus HaYochid. It's not a Rishus HaYochid, and it's not a Rishus HaRabim. So if you're into, for instance, if you have a yam, if you have a body of water, so that's not considered Rishus HaYochid nor Rishus HaRabim. It's not surrounded by the mechitzas. Here it's surrounded by proper mechitzas. So min HaTorah, this is a Rishus HaYochid. The Rabbanan asered carrying such a large area because since it's so large and you don't even see the mechitzas in such a large area, it's like hukav l'dira. It wasn't made for as a residential area. People might think it's a Rishus HaRabim and that you can carry in Rishus HaRabim, but it doesn't change the fact that min HaTorah, it's still a Rishus HaYochid. So therefore, my time mechitze, it has mechitzas, it has kosher mechitzas, elishim uchusarim diorim. It's lacking in residence, and therefore, midrabanan, they asered it because it doesn't have it's not considered, it's not viewed as a residential area. And therefore, they treated it not as a residential area, they treated it as a karmelis, the Rabbanan asered. But really, mikra din, it's a Rishus HaYochid. Masiv Rav Huna Bar Chinana, he asked the kasha, selish, if you have a rock that's in the sea, so you have a rock, this rock area in the sea kind of island, if the rock is 10 high and 4 wide, so it has the dimensions of a Rishus HaYochid. So therefore, you cannot carry it from the yam to it or from it to the yam. The yam is a karmelis. So midrabanan, you can't carry from Rishus HaYochid to a karmelis. This rock is a Rishus HaYochid, so you can't carry it. But if the height is not 10, so it's less than that, then metalton, then you could carry. If it's less than that, the rock is not a Rishus HaYochid, so it's just like the yam, and you can carry in the yam to it or it to it. It's all within the karmelis. Ad kama, to what area, how large can the rock be? Ad beis asayim. It can only be as large as a beis asayim. Now the Gemara is going to analyze this last statement. What is it referring to? This last statement, when it says until a beis asayim, only until the area of beis asayim, what's it referring to? Ilema seif, if it's going on the seif. And it says that if the rock does not have the height of 10, it's a low height area, meaning, and therefore, it's not a Rishus HaYochid. So beis asayim tvei loy, it can only be if the rock is a beis asayim, but not more than that. Well, what's the difference? If the rock doesn't have the height of 10 tefachim, it's not a rishus yochid. What difference does it make if it's more than a beis hasaim or less than a beis hasaim? It's a carmelist. The yam is a carmelist. You're carrying from a carmelist to a carmelist. There's no issue to carry from a carmelist to a carmelist. So why would that be a limitation? Why would we impose a limitation of beis hasaim? Elalav must be a elaboration. It must be referring to the ratio where the rock is 10 high. If you have the rock in the Siga Vayasav of Daled, which is 10 high and 4 wide, it's solid about Daled. You can't carry from the rock to the Yam or from the Yam to the rock because the rock is a Rishus HaYachid. Vad kama on beis hasaim. That's only if the area of the rock is a beis hasaim. Hayasim beis hasaim metaltalin. But if it is more than that, then you could be metaltal. Alma, you see, carmelisi. Don't you see that the rock? If it's more than a beis hasaim, there it's a carmelis. That we treat the rock as a carmelis, and we treat it even to say that it's mutter to carry over there into the Yam. So therefore we say that if it is so large, if the area is so large, then it now is not considered to be a Rishus HaYachid. So therefore we say to you, Rav Yochanan. Rav Yochanan said, it doesn't matter how large it is. If it has mechitzas which are dalet tefachim high. If it has the height of the mechitzas, it doesn't matter how large the area is, it's a Rishus HaYachid. And if you throw from the Rishus HaRam to there, you're chayiv. It doesn't make a difference. Now, don't we see over here that it says that we say that you cannot carry from or throw from the Yam to the rock, it's only if it's not more than beis hasaim, but if it's more than beis hasaim, you could. So doesn't that show you that if it's more than a beis hasaim, it loses its status as a Rishus HaYachid? Rav says no. He says, Mandala Yoda Tirutzim is nicer. The person that doesn't know how to be matarz to for the Baraisa is Tiyuf to Moisele Rav Yochanan, and he asks a kashan Rav Yochanan. Lo Elamat HaYaresh. Yes, it is going on the ration, but v'hachikam. But what it means to say is as follows. What it means to say is, if you have the rock that's 10 high and dalet al dalet, so then you can't be metaltal from it to the Yam or the Yam to it. But you could be metaltal on the rock, within the rock. But va'ad kama, till what area could you be metaltal within the rock? At beis hasaim. Only if the rock is up to beis hasaim. If the rock is more than a beis hasaim, then that's considered a karpav that's yaisim a beis hasaim shalahuk of ladira, and you can't carry even on the rock because then we treat it as a karmos. That's what it means. It means at beis hasaim. Really, I'll tell you, the isser of throwing from the Yam to the rock doesn't matter how large it is. It's still considered Rishus HaYachid, like Rav Yochanan says. If it's within beis hasaim, you can be metaltal on the rock. More than a beis hasaim, you can't. Rav Ashi Amar Loilam Reishi agrees that it's going on the Reisha, and there's another way of explaining it, also that it is not a kashan Rav Yochanan. Hein Amar Vein Amar. The Rabbanan said that gave two isurim, utzira the Rabbanan. Hein Amar Karpav Yaisim Beis Hasaim Shelo Hukav Ladira, that if it's more than a Beis Hasaim and it's not Hukav Ladira, Ein Metalton Boil B'Dalet Amos, you can't carry more than Dalet Amos. So they said that a large area, that if it's surrounded with mechitzas, but it's not hukav ladir, wasn't surrounded for residential use, then you can't carry, only within dalet. The Rabbanan also had a different takana that you can't be metaled from a Rishus HaYachid to a karmelis. These are two different takanas. They can't be metaled from a Rishus HaYachid to a karmelis, and you can't be metaled in a large area of that is larger than a beis hasaim shelo hukav ladir. So therefore, they explain as follows. If the area of the rock is not more than a beis hasaim, so therefore you are allowed to carry within the rock, then there the Rabbanan says you can't carry from the rock to the Yam and the Yam to it, where you can be metaltal within the rock. So it's clear if you can be metaltal on the rock, that the rock is a Rishus HaYachid. Then they said it's also to be metaltal to the Yam or to the Yam to the rock. My timer, Rishus HaYachid Gemuri. because then it has a complete Rishus Yachid. Even midrabanan, we treat it as a Rishus Yachid. You can carry within the whole area of the rock. We treat it as a Rishus Yachid, and therefore we say you can't throw and carry into the Yam. But yes, from Besasayim also Tatal Bakula, but it's more than Besasayim, where it's also to carry on that whole area. So it's not a Rishus Yachid Gemura, meaning midrabanan, we don't treat it as a Rishus Yachid. If it was a Rishus Yachid Gemura that we treated even at midrabanan as a Rishus Yachid, you'd be mutter to carry on the rock. But here we're saying you can't carry on the rock. So therefore, Shorabana Taltulam Yisayich Layam Yam L'Saycha. Therefore, the Rabbanan waived that Isser, the Isser of being metaltal from a Carmelist to Rishus Yachid. In this case, since the rock is, we don't treat it like a Rishus Yachid Gemur. We impose the Takana, the Rabbanan, that it's more than a base of Saim, you can't be metaltal to it. So we don't treat it mid Rabbanan like Rishus Yachid Gemura. We therefore said that it's mutter to carry it to the Yam. We waived, the Rabbanan waived the Isser of carrying from a Yam, from a Carmelist to Rishus Yachid. My time, what is this? So what is the reason? Why did they ask her being metaltal from the Yam to the rock? Because Dilma Amr Rishus Yachid Gemuri. If they said it's also to be metaltal from the Yam to the rock, people think that the rock is a complete Rishus Yachid. Even the Rabban is a Rishus Yachid, Vasal Tatula Bakula, and they might come to be metaltal on a whole rock. Now, if the rock is more than a base of Saim, and it's more than a base of Shalahukal, it's also to be metaltal on the whole rock. So therefore, they waived the takana of being metaltal from the Yam to the rock in order to enforce, to strengthen the takana of not carrying on an area that's Yaisim Rebesasayim, Shalahuka Fladira. Umaishna. Why should we give priority to this takana over that takana? They're two separate takanas, but why should we give one over the other priority? It's more common to carry on the area, within the area of the rock. That's more common. But it's not so common to carry from the Yam to the rock or vice versa. So therefore, they wanted to enforce the takana that was more common. So therefore, in order to reinforce that takana of not carrying on a base of Saim, an area that's Yaisim base of Saim Shalahuka Fladira, they waived the Isser of carrying from the rock to the Yam and the Yam to the rock, and they said it's mutter. So therefore, we see the Brisa, we have two terutzim and why the Brisa is not difficult according to Rabbi Yochanan. Ahu Yenuka Dishtab B'Chamim. And there was a Vlad, it was an 8-day-old Vlad, they had to have the bris, it was on Shabbos, and the hot water spilled out. Now, in those days, they used to bathe the child with hot water, and if after the Milah, if they didn't use hot water, it was considered to be a sakana. So the case in hand is that it's not a sakanas nefashos, because if it was sakanas nefashos, it would be mutter to bring the water, even though it would involve a chil Shabbos. So as Rashi speaks out, we're talking about where it was before the Milah. So they wanted to bring the hot water before the Milah, and Taisus mentions because if it would have been after the Milah, then it would be a sakanas nefashos, and it would be mutter. So therefore, we're talking about the Milah they haven't commenced the Milah yet, but they want to bring the hot water. So how you know this tabak chamima? Amrle Rabba said, "Naislo chamima migoy basa." He said, "Bring it to me. Bring it from my house." He said he lived in another house on the Hofstedter, and he said that they should bring the hot water from his house. Amrle Abaya, v'haloi arvina. But he said, we didn't join in Erev, so how can you now bring it into the Chatzar from the house? Amar le nismach hashituf. Will rely on the shituf that they have in the Movi. If they had a shituf in the Movi, then they had a shituf in the Movi that will allow us to carry it from the house to the Chatzar. Amar le haloi shtatfina. He said, but we didn't join in the shituf in the Movi either. We didn't join in the shituf either, so how can we carry it? So Rabbi said, "Name it lo Nochi Leslie. Tell a Nochi, tell a Goy to bring it." Amar Abaya, Boila Civil Marvelish Kafin Rav Yosef. Abaya said he wanted to ask a kash on this, and we'll see in the next moment. We'll see what the kasha is. But he said he was going to ask a kasha, but Veloish Avkin Rav Yosef. But Rav Yosef did not allow him to ask the kasha. He said they didn't allow him to ask the kasha, he said it's mutter, then we can saimech on Rava, bring the water, you'll ask a kasha afterwards. Dam Rav Yosef Amar Rav Kahana Ki Avinu Bei Rav Yehuda Amar Lani told us b'daraisa, if this is a question of a daraisa, if it's a question that you're being over daraisa. So, for instance, if this would have been bringing it to the Rishus HaRabim, if it would involve a potential malacha daraisa, Ma'asvina Tiyuta v'Hadarav Dina Maisa. First, we clarify it. If we have a kasha, we ask the kasha, and only then do we carry out the maisa. Do we then do the maisa? But b'darabanan, if what we're dealing with is an issue, darabanan avdina maisa v'hadam masina tiyufta, you do the maisa first, and then you can ask kashas later. So we'll see in the shortly. We'll see in the next shiur what the kasha is that he's going to ask. But firstly, he maintained this principle that if it's a din d'Rabbanan, if it's a question of a chil of an isur d'Rabbanan, you clarify later. In the meantime, you can go ahead and do it. There's a dion in the Achronim. Does that mean, therefore, that if it turned out, for instance, that this would have been incorrect, and does the person need a kapara for this? So if you are over d'Rabbanan, and it was a mistake, do you need a kapara? So the Nesiva says, you see from here, that if it's a suffix, and you can ask the question later, even though you have a shaila, you can ask the question later. In the meantime, you can go ahead and do the maisa, and even though it's a suffix d'Rabbanan, and therefore you can rely on that. And even if it turns out the maisa that there was a Ro'yer d'Rabbanan, but you can rely on the suffix d'Rabbanan, and therefore it's mutter, and you don't need a kapara for that. But over here, the Radva says it's not that way. He says it's only over here because he had a psak. Rava, it wasn't that you had a stama suffix. You had a psak. Rava said it's mutter. So if he said it's mutter, then you can rely on that. You have a kasha, you can be involved that later. But in the meantime, it's not only a suffix over here. You have a suffix with a psak. Rava said it's mutter. That you can rely on. But if you didn't have a psak, he said, then that would not be the case. So we'll see what the kasha is. We'll see in the upcoming share.